Long before the Targaryens ever set foot upon Westeros, they were but one family among many in the great Valyrian freehold, that vast empire of dragon lords and sorcerers that stretched across much of Essos. The freehold was a place of unimaginable power, where 40 great families commanded dragons and ruled with fire-made flesh. Yet, among these mighty houses, the Targaryens were considered minor, holding less prestige and fewer dragons than the greatest of the Dragon Lord families. Their seat was not in the heart of Valyria itself, but on the distant island of Dragonstone, a volcanic outcrop in the narrow sea far from the centers of power. This perceived weakness would prove to be their salvation, for when the doom came to Valyria, the Targaryens alone among the Dragon Lords survived to carry forward the bloodline of old Valyria. In the quiet stone halls of Dragonstone, the roar of dragons echoed across black sand beaches, and the family that history had overlooked would become the last keepers of an ancient flame. Daenerys Targaryen was only a young maiden when the visions came to her. Dreams so vivid and terrible that they drove her to wake screaming in the night. She was gifted with what the Valyrians called the dragon dreams, prophetic visions that showed glimpses of things yet to come. In her dreams, she saw the doom, a cataclysm of fire and blood that would swallow Valyria whole and turn the greatest civilization the world had ever known into ash and memory. Daenerys begged her father Enar to believe her, to flee before the doom arrived. The other dragon lords laughed at House Targaryen, mocking Enar for listening to the dreams of a girl. They called him craven for abandoning his holdings in Valyria. Yet Enar trusted his daughter, and 12 years before the doom fell upon Valyria, he gathered his family, their 5 dragons, and all their worldly possessions, and sailed west to Dragonstone. Daenerys would be remembered ever after as Daenerys the Dreamer, the young woman whose visions saved her house from annihilation. Aenar Targaryen, who would be called the Exile, made the decision that preserved his bloodline when all others perished. He was not a man of great renown in Valyria, not a conqueror or a hero whose name was sung in the streets. He was simply a father who believed his daughter when she told him the world was ending. When the doom came, the 14 flames of Valyria erupted with such fury that the very peninsula shattered and sank beneath the boiling sea. Every dragon in Valyria died. Every Dragon Lord family was extinguished, and the greatest empire the world had ever known vanished in a single day of fire and ash. Only the Targaryens remained, safe on their island in the narrow sea, their 5 dragons circling above black stone towers. Enar the Exile had been mocked for his cowardice, but in the end, he was the only one wise enough to heed the warnings of fate. The smoke of Valyria drifted across the seas for years, and the Targaryens watched from Dragonstone, the last dragon lords in all the world. The 5 dragons that Enar brought to Dragonstone represented the entire future of dragonkind in the known world. Balerion was among them, then just a hatchling, though he would grow to become the largest and most terrible dragon ever to fly the skies of Westeros. Vhagar was another, and she too would live to become a creature of legend. The names of the other 3 have been lost to history, for they died within the first 2 generations of the Targaryen presence on Dragonstone, leaving no riders and no eggs that survived. For over a century after their arrival, the Targaryens remained on their island, content to be lords of Dragonstone rather than conquerors of continents. They watched the freehold collapse, watched the century of blood tear Essos apart, and they waited. The dragons grew. new eggs hatched and the bloodline strengthened. In the cold stone chambers beneath Dragonstone, dragon eggs were warmed by volcanic heat, and the Targaryens learned that they alone still possessed the power to hatch and ride the greatest weapons the world had ever known. Aemon Targaryen, called the Glorious, was the first of the family to expand beyond Dragonstone itself during the century before the conquest. He was Enar's grandson, a capable and ambitious lord who saw opportunity in the chaos that followed the Doom. While the great powers of Essos warred among themselves in the Century of Blood, Aemon extended a Targaryen influence over the islands of the Narrow Sea. He made alliances with the free cities when it suited him, and raided their shipping when it did not. Under his rule, House Targaryen grew wealthy from trade and tribute, and their dragons grew large enough to inspire fear in any who might challenge them. Aemon married his sister, as was the Valyrian custom, continuing a tradition that would define House Targaryen for generations to come. The blood of the dragon, they believed, must remain pure, and only those of Valyrian descent could hope to bond with the great beasts. Aemon the Glorious laid the foundations upon which his descendants would build an empire. Aegon Targaryen, later called the Conqueror, was born on Dragonstone to Lord Aerion Targaryen and Lady Valaena Velaryon. From his earliest days, he was different from his forebears, possessed of an ambition that looked westward toward the Seven Kingdoms rather than eastward toward the ruins of Valyria. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with the silver-gold hair and purple eyes that marked the blood of old Valyria. At a young age, he claimed the dragon Balerion, the Black Dread, the last living creature to have seen Valyria before the Doom. Balerian's scales were black as midnight, his fire hot enough to melt stone, and his wingspan so vast that entire towns fell into shadow when he passed overhead. Aegon was not content to rule a single island while 7 kingdoms squabbled across the Narrow Sea. He studied maps of Westeros, learned the strengths and weaknesses of each kingdom, and dreamed of a realm united under a single crown. The fire of ambition burned in him as hot as dragon fire itself. Visenya Targaryen was the elder of Aegon's 2 sister wives, a warrior queen whose skill with a blade was matched only by her mastery of the dragon Vhagar. Where Aegon was calculating and measured, Visenya was fierce and unyielding, as sharp as the Valyrian steel sword she carried, the blade called Dark Sister. She cropped her hair short in the manner of a soldier and wore ringmail beneath her gowns, always prepared for battle. Visenya was a practitioner of the old Valyrian arts, learned in sorcery and the darker mysteries of the world. When Aegon needed a diplomat, he sent Rhaenys. When he needed a commander who would accept nothing less than total victory, he sent Visenya. She was not loved as her sister was loved, but she was respected, and that respect was earned through fire and blood. In the years of the conquest, Vhagar's shadow fell upon castles from the Eyrie to Old Town, and those who saw the silver-haired queen upon her dragon knew that resistance meant death. Rhaenys Targaryen was the younger sister wife, and by all accounts she was Aegon's great love. Where Visenya was hard, Rhaenys was soft. Where Visenya commanded through fear, Rhaenys inspired through charm. She was a creature of music and poetry, of laughter and joy, beloved by all who knew her. She rode the dragon Meraxes, a golden beast with scales that shimmered in sunlight. Rhaenys was curious about the world in ways her siblings were not, often flying upon Meraxes simply for the pleasure of it, exploring the lands below. She delighted in singers and dancers and surrounded herself with artists and dreamers. Yet, for all her gentleness, Rhaenys was still a dragon rider and still a conqueror. When the time came for war, she rode Meraxes into battle without hesitation. Her death in Dorne, years after the conquest, broke something in Aegon that never fully healed, and the songs that she loved fell silent in the halls of the Red Keep. The conquest itself began when Aegon landed at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush with his sisters and a modest army of supporters. He had fewer than 3,000 men, a force that any of the 7 kingdoms could have crushed with ease. But Aegon did not conquer with soldiers, he conquered with dragons. At the site where he first landed, Aegon raised an earthen fort and declared his intention to rule all of Westeros. Letters flew to every corner of the continent, demanding submission. Some kings bent the knee immediately, recognizing that no army could stand against dragonfire. Others refused, and those who refused learned the terrible price of defiance. The 3 dragons, Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes, flew in formation across the skies of Westeros, and the people below looked up in terror at creatures from legend made terribly real. The age of petty kings was ending, and the age of dragons had begun. The Field of Fire was the battle that broke the last great resistance to Targaryen rule, a confrontation so devastating that it is still remembered with horror thousands of years later. The combined armies of the Reach and the Westerlands, nearly 60,000 men strong, faced Aegon and his sisters in open battle. It was the largest army ever assembled in Westeros, and its commanders believed that even dragons could not prevail against such numbers. They were wrong. Aegon and his sisters rode their dragons together for the first and only time, and they unleashed fire upon the enemy host with a fury that defied comprehension. 4,000 men burned to death that day. Another 10,000 were wounded by dragonfire. King Mern of the Reach died upon the field, his entire house extinguished with him. King Loren of the Rock survived only by fleeing, and he bent the knee to Aegon within days. The smell of burning flesh hung over the battlefield for weeks, and the ground was said to have remained warm for years afterward. Aegon was crowned twice during the conquest, first at the mouth of the Blackwater and again in Old Town at the Starry Sept. The High Septon had seen wisdom in accepting the inevitable, and he anointed Aegon with the 7 holy oils, proclaiming him Aegon of House Targaryen, first of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. The titles were grand, though in truth Aegon did not yet rule all 7 kingdoms, for Dorne remained unconquered and defiant. But the ceremony established the Targaryen claim to divine legitimacy, binding the faith of the 7 to the dragon throne. Upon his head was placed a crown of Valyrian steel, a circlet set with rubies that would be worn by his descendants for generations. Aegon was not a religious man, but he understood the power of symbols, and on that day in Old Town, the Targaryen dynasty was truly born. The construction of the Red Keep took many years, but the Iron Throne was forged in a single day. Aegon commanded that the swords of his defeated enemies be gathered and melted by dragonfire into a single seat from which he would rule the realm. Balerian's flames were hot enough to melt steel, but not hot enough to fully reshape it, and so the throne became a twisted mass of blades and points, uncomfortable and even dangerous to sit upon. This was by design, for Aegon believed that a king should never sit easy. The throne was placed in the great hall of the Aegon Fort, the first castle on the hill that would become the Red Keep, and there Aegon held court. Petitioners climbed the steps to kneel before the king, looking up at a man seated upon a mountain of surrendered swords. The message was clear to all who saw it. Aegon had conquered, and the swords of his enemies now served no purpose but to support his rule. After the conquest, Aegon spent his reign traveling the realm, never staying in one place for too long. He believed that a king should be seen by his people, should know their concerns and their lands. He rode Balerion from castle to castle, from the wall to Dorne's borders, dispensing justice and reinforcing the bonds of loyalty that held the realm together. In each kingdom, he relied upon the great lords to rule in his name, rarely interfering with local customs unless necessary. This was the foundation of Targaryen rule. The dragons were the ultimate authority, but day-to-day governance remained in the hands of those who understood their lands best. Aegon was a conqueror, but he was also a pragmatist. He understood that ruling was different from conquering, and he worked to build a kingdom that could endure long after the dragons were gone. His reign lasted 37 years, and when he died, he left behind a realm more united than it had ever been. Rhaenys met her end in Dorne, the only kingdom that Aegon never truly conquered. The Dornish had refused to fight the dragons in open battle, knowing that such a contest could only end in fire. Instead, they melted away into the deserts and mountains, fighting a shadow war of ambushes and assassinations. When Rhaenys flew over Dorne upon Meraxes, the Dornish did not flee. At a place called Hellhold, a scorpion bolt pierced Meraxes through the eye, and the great dragon fell from the sky, carrying Queen Rhaenys to her death. Her body was never recovered, and what happened to her in the final moments became a subject of dark speculation. Aegon raged against Dorne for years afterward, burning castle after castle, but the Dornish would not yield. In the end, even dragonfire could not conquer a people determined to remain free. Rhaenys was the first Targaryen queen to die, and her loss cast a shadow over the remainder of Aegon's reign. Aenys was Aegon's firstborn son, born to Rhaenys and raised to be king. He was a gentle soul, more interested in books and music than warfare, and from his earliest years there were whispers that he lacked the strength to rule. When Aenys was a child, he was sickly and weak, and there were those who doubted he would survive to adulthood. Yet he did survive, and when Aegon died, Aenys took the throne as Aenys the Firn Targaryen. His reign was troubled from the beginning. Rebellions flared across the realm, and Aenys proved unable or unwilling to crush them with the iron hand that his father had wielded. He was a kind man, perhaps too kind for the throne, and his kindness was mistaken for weakness. When the faith militant rose against him, outraged by the Targaryen practice of incestuous marriage, Aenys could not bring himself to respond with the necessary brutality. His reign lasted only 5 years, and when he died, the realm he left behind was more unstable than it had been in a generation. Maegor was the son of Visenya, the warrior queen's only child, and he was everything his half-brother Aenys was not. Where Aenys was gentle, Maegor was brutal. Where Aenys hesitated, Maegor struck. He was called Maegor the Cruel even in his own lifetime, a name he earned through acts of violence that horrified even his supporters. When Aenys died, Visenya placed the crown upon Maegor's head, bypassing Aenys' own sons. The realm descended into civil war, and Maegor prosecuted that war with a savagery that became legendary. He rode Balerion, the same dragon his father had ridden, and he used dragonfire to annihilate anyone who opposed him. The construction of the Red Keep was completed during his reign, and he celebrated by executing every worker who had built it, so that the secrets of the castle would die with them. Maegor took 6 wives in his desperate quest for an heir, but every child his wives conceived was stillborn or monstrous, and whispers spread that he was cursed. The end of Maegor came suddenly and mysteriously in the throne room of the Red Keep he had built. He was found dead upon the Iron Throne, his wrists slashed by the blades of the seat itself. Whether he took his own life or was killed by an assassin remains unknown to this day. By the time of his death, Maegor had few friends and many enemies. His cruelty had alienated nearly everyone, and armies were marching against him from every direction. His body was found by a servant in the early morning, his blood pooled upon the floor, his crown fallen from his brow. Maegor left no heirs, and with his death, the crown passed to Jaehaerys, the son of Aenys who had survived Maegor's purges by fleeing into hiding. The reign of Maegor the Cruel was over, and the realm breathed a collective sigh of relief, hoping that the darkness had finally passed. Jaehaerys the Targaryen would become known as the Conciliator, and later as the Old King, for he ruled longer than any king before or since. He took the throne at the age of 14, a boy king inheriting a realm scarred by war and religious strife. Yet Jaehaerys proved to be perhaps the greatest ruler the Seven Kingdoms ever knew. He made peace with the faith, ending the conflict that had torn the realm apart under his father and uncle. He reformed the laws of the kingdom, creating a unified code of justice that applied from the Wall to Dorne. He built roads and bridges, encouraged trade and learning, and presided over an era of prosperity that lasted for decades. Jaehaerys rode the dragon Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, and though he was a man of peace, none doubted that he could defend his realm if necessary. His reign lasted 55 years, and when he died, he was mourned throughout the Seven Kingdoms as a father to his people. Good Queen Alysanne was the beloved wife of Jaehaerys, his partner in all things, and a queen whose influence shaped the realm as much as the king's own decisions. She flew upon the dragon Silverwing, a pale silver beauty whose wings caught the light like living moonlight. Alysanne was passionate about justice and the welfare of the common people, and she convinced Jaehaerys to outlaw the Lord's right to the first night and to abolish other cruel customs that had persisted since the Age of Heroes. She visited the Wall and dined with the Night's Watch, so moved by their sacrifice that she convinced her husband to grant them new lands for their dwindling order. Alysanne bore Jaehaerys 13 children, though many of them died young, and the grief of those losses wore heavily upon her in her final years. The love between Jaehaerys and Alysanne was legendary, though it was tested by tragedy again and again. When she died, Jaehaerys withdrew from the world, a broken man who had lost his other half. The children of Jaehaerys and Alysanne were numerous, yet tragedy touched nearly all of them, as though the gods demanded a price for the peace and prosperity of the realm. Aegon was their firstborn son, a promising young prince who died of a fever before he could reach manhood. Aemon, their second son, became Prince of Dragonstone and seemed destined for the throne, but he too was taken before his time, slain by a crossbow bolt during a minor conflict in the Stepstones. Baelin, who became heir after Aemon's death, was called the Spring Prince for his vigor and warmth. Yet even he would die young, carried off by a burst belly that no Maester could heal. Daughters were lost to childbed and to illness. Grandchildren perished in accidents and in infancy. By the time Jaehaerys reached his final years, he had buried more children and grandchildren than any parent should ever know. The halls of the Red Keep, which had rung with the laughter of princes and princesses, grew quiet, and the old king sat alone upon his throne, surrounded by ghosts. The Great Council of 101 AC was called to determine the succession after the death of Prince Baelon, for the question of who should inherit had become tangled by tragedy and circumstance. Baelon had 2 sons, Viserys and Daemon, but Aemon had left behind a daughter, Rhaenys, who had her own claim. Rhaenys had married Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake, and together they had children who might also press their rights. Lords from across the realm gathered at Harrenhal, that vast and ruined castle, to debate and to vote. In the end, by a margin so large it brooked no argument, the lords chose Viserys, the son of Balon, over Rhaenys, the daughter of Aemon. The precedent was clear. The male line would take precedence over the female. Rhaenys accepted the decision with grace, though she would forever be known as the queen who never was. The choice made at Harrenhal would echo through the generations, shaping the fate of House Targaryen in ways none could then foresee. Viserys the Rowan Targaryen was a kind and generous man, beloved by his court and his people, yet his reign would plant the seeds of the greatest catastrophe in Targaryen history. He ascended the throne after the death of Jaehaerys, inheriting a peaceful and prosperous realm. Viserys loved comfort and pleasure, delighting in feasts and tournaments and the company of friends. He rode no dragon after his youth, preferring the warmth of the throne room to the cold winds of the sky. His first wife, Aemma Arryn, gave him a daughter, Rhaenyra, before passing away in childbirth, along with the son who might have been heir. Viserys named Rhaenyra his heir, making the lords of the realm swear oaths to support her claim. It was a decision born of love and grief, a father's determination that his daughter would not be passed over as Rhaenys had been. Yet, when Viserys remarried and fathered sons, the oaths sworn to Rhaenyra began to seem less binding, and the realm drifted toward a conflict that would consume them all. Rhaenyra Targaryen was called the realm's delight in her youth, a princess of surpassing beauty and charm who captured the hearts of all who met her. She had her father's warmth and her mother's grace, with the silver-gold hair and violet eyes that marked the blood of old Valyria. As a child, she sat upon her father's knee during council meetings, learning the art of rulership. She rode the dragon Syrax, a golden she-dragon who had been her companion since childhood. Rhaenyra was proud and willful, accustomed to being the center of attention, and she expected that she would one day sit the Iron Throne as her father had promised. Her claim was strengthened when lords from across the realm came to King's Landing to swear their oaths, kneeling before the young princess and pledging their swords to her cause. Yet, as she grew older, the politics of the court grew more complex, and Rhaenyra found herself surrounded by enemies who smiled to her face while plotting her destruction. Daemon Targaryen was the younger brother of King Viserys, and he was perhaps the most dangerous man in the Seven Kingdoms. He was a warrior without equal, handsome and charming when he wished to be, cruel and capricious when the mood struck him. Daemon had claimed the dragon Caraxes, called the Bloodworm for its lean red body and fierce temperament, a dragon as wild and unpredictable as its rider. He wielded the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister, the blade that had once belonged to Visenya, and he used it with deadly skill in countless battles. Daemon was ambitious beyond measure, never content with what he had, always reaching for more. He quarreled with his brother, fought in foreign wars, and took wives and lovers as it pleased him. When he finally married Rhaenyra, his niece, the union was either a great love story or a calculated political alliance, depending on who told the tale. Daemon was the fire that burned brightest in House Targaryen, but fire can warm or it can destroy. Alicent Hightower became the second wife of King Viserys after Queen Aemma's death, and her arrival at court changed everything. She was the daughter of Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, a woman of great beauty and greater ambition. Alicent had been a companion to the old King Jaehaerys in his final years, reading to him and keeping him company in his dotage. She was pious and proper, everything that the wild Rhaenyra was not, and she caught Viserys' eye when he was still mourning his first wife. Their marriage produced 4 children: Aegon, Helaena, Aemond, and Daeron. With the birth of Aegon, a son who bore the name of the conqueror himself, the question of succession became a wound that would not heal. Alicent believed that her son should inherit before Rhaenyra, following the precedent set by the Great Council. The friendship that had once existed between Alicent and Rhaenyra curdled into bitter enmity, and the court divided into factions that would tear the realm apart. Aegon II Targaryen was the eldest son of Viserys and Alicent, the prince whose very existence challenged his half-sister's claim to the throne. He was raised in luxury and excess, a young man more interested in pleasure than in duty, fond of wine and women and the company of his friends. Unlike Rhaenyra, Aegon had shown little interest in learning to rule, preferring to leave such matters to his mother and grandfather. He claimed the dragon Sunfire, called the most beautiful dragon ever seen in Westeros, whose scales shimmered gold and pink in the sunlight. Aegon did not particularly want the throne, at least not in his youth, but his mother and her allies convinced him that taking the crown was his duty, that allowing Rhaenyra to rule would mean death for him and his siblings. When his father died, Aegon was crowned in the Dragon Pit, while Rhaenyra remained unaware on Dragonstone. The usurpation, as Rhaenyra's supporters called it, set the 7 kingdoms ablaze. Helaena Targaryen was the sister and wife of Aegon II, a gentle soul who had no taste for the intrigues that consumed her family. She was a dreamer, prone to making strange pronouncements that others dismissed as fancy but which sometimes proved prophetic. Helaena rode the dragon Dreamfire, an old she-dragon whose scales were pale blue and silver, a beautiful but aging beast. She bore Aegon 3 children, the twins Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, and a younger son, Mylar. Helaena was happiest when tending to her children or her insects, for she kept a collection of bugs and spiders that fascinated and repulsed the courtiers in equal measure. The war that would consume her family brought Helaena nothing but sorrow. She would suffer losses that no mother should endure, witness horrors that shattered her mind, and in the end, she would find her own way to escape the nightmare her life had become. Her story is one of the most tragic in all the annals of House Targaryen. Aemond Targaryen was the second son of Viserys and Alicent, a prince defined by ambition, resentment, and the loss of an eye. As a child, Aemond had been mocked by his nephews for being dragonless while they rode their own mounts. Determined to prove himself, he claimed the dragon Vhagar, the largest and most fearsome dragon still alive, the old queen who had been ridden by Visenya herself during the conquest. In the confrontation that followed, Aemond lost an eye to his nephew Lucerys, and though he was given a sapphire to fill the empty socket, the hatred born that night never faded. Aemond was a skilled warrior, cold and calculating, perhaps the most dangerous of all the Targaryen princes of his generation. He wore his sapphire eye like a badge of honor, a reminder of what had been taken from him and what he intended to take in return. When the Dance of the Dragons began, Aemond became the deadliest weapon in his brother's arsenal. The Dance of the Dragons was the name given to the civil war between Rhaenyra and Aegon II, a conflict that would all but destroy House Targaryen. It was brother against sister, uncle against nephew, dragon against dragon. At the war's beginning, both sides possessed formidable strength. Rhaenyra had more dragons, but Aegon had Vhagar, the mightiest of them all. The realm fractured as lords chose sides, some honoring the oaths they had sworn to Rhaenyra, others supporting the male line as tradition dictated. The fighting was brutal and merciless, with atrocities committed by both factions. Castles burned, armies clashed, and dragons fell from the sky. The small folk suffered most of all, caught between the ambitions of princes who cared nothing for their lives. Before the war was over, nearly all the dragons would be dead, and the Targaryen dynasty would be broken in ways that could never be fully repaired. Fire and blood, the words of House Targaryen, became a curse as much as a promise. The tragedy known as Blood and Cheese was among the darkest moments of the dance, an atrocity that shocked even those hardened by war. Daemon Targaryen, seeking vengeance for the death of his stepson Lucerys at Aemond's hands, arranged for 2 assassins to infiltrate the Red Keep. One was a former gold cloak called Blood, the other a rat catcher called Cheese, who knew the secret passages of the castle. They found Queen Helaena with her 3 children and presented her with an impossible choice. She must choose which of her sons would die, or they would kill all 3. Helaena, broken by terror, named her youngest, Maelor, hoping perhaps that they would take him and spare the older boy. Instead, they killed Jaehaerys, the elder twin and heir to Aegon II, before his mother's eyes. The act was meant to wound Aegon as Rhaenyra had been wounded, but it also extinguished something in Helaena that could never be rekindled. She would never recover from that night. Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was, rode into the Dance of the Dragons despite her advanced years, determined to fight for the rights that had been denied to her. She was the daughter of Prince Aemon, passed over by the Great Council in favor of Viserys, and now she fought so that her friend Rhaenyra would not suffer the same fate. Rhaenys rode Meleys, the Red Queen, an old and cunning dragon whose scales were scarlet and whose flames burned hot. At the Battle of Rook's Rest, Rhaenys faced Aegon II on Sunfire and Aemond on Vhagar. It was 3 dragons against 1, and though Meleys fought with all her ancient fury, the outcome was inevitable. Rhaenys died as she had lived, with courage and dignity, her dragon torn from the sky by Vhagar's terrible jaws. She had been denied the crown, but no one could deny that she had the heart of a queen. Jaehaerys Velaryon was the eldest son of Rhaenyra, a young prince of great promise who took up his mother's cause with passion and intelligence. Though officially the son of Laenor Velaryon, whispers suggested that his true father was Harwin Strong, given his brown hair and features that bore no resemblance to Valyrian blood. These rumors were never proven, but they provided ammunition to those who wished to delegitimize Rhaenyra's line. Jaehaerys rode the dragon Vermax and served as his mother's chief diplomat, flying to the north and the Vale to secure alliances for the coming war. He was brave and dutiful, beloved by those who knew him, and he represented everything that the Black faction hoped for in a future king. His death came at the Battle of the Gullet, when Vermax was brought down over the waters of the Narrow Sea. Jacaeirus, tangled in his dragon's harness, drowned beneath the waves, and with him died much of Rhaenyra's hope for victory. Lucerys Velaryon was the second son of Rhaenyra, a boy of just 14 when the dance began. He rode the young dragon Arax, a creature swift but small, not yet fully grown. When Rhaenyra sent her sons as envoys to secure alliances, Lucerys was dispatched to Storm's End to win the support of House Baratheon. There he found Aemond Targaryen, who had arrived first and already secured the Baratheon alliance. The confrontation was inevitable, for Aemond had never forgotten the eye he had lost to Lucerys years before. When Lucerys departed Storm's End, Aemond pursued him on Vhagar. Above the storm-tossed waters of Shipbreaker Bay, the old dragon caught the young, and Arax and Lucerys were torn from the sky. The first blood of the dance had been royal blood, and from that moment there could be no peace between the factions. The war would only end when one side was utterly destroyed. Baela and Rhaena Targaryen were the twin daughters of Daemon Targaryen by his second wife, Lyanna Velaryon. They were raised in the traditions of House Targaryen, fierce and proud, each bonded to a dragon of her own. Baela claimed Moondancer, a pale green dragon swift and agile, and she proved herself a true daughter of Daemon in her courage and daring. At the fall of Dragonstone, Baela rode Moondancer against Sunfire, challenging Aegon Send himself in single combat. Though she was defeated and badly burned, she survived, her defiance a testament to the spirit of her house. Rhaena, the gentler of the twins, cared for the dragon eggs and hatchlings, and she would eventually claim the dragon Morning, one of the last dragons born, during the dance. Both sisters survived the war that killed so many of their kin, living to see the Targaryen dynasty struggle to rebuild from the ashes. Aegon the Younger was the son of Rhaenyra and Daemon, a boy caught in the center of the conflict that tore his family apart. He witnessed horrors that no child should see, including the death of his mother, who was devoured by Sunfire before his eyes at the command of Aegon the Sen. The trauma of that moment scarred him forever, leaving him with a deep hatred of dragons that he could never overcome. When Aegon II was poisoned and the war finally ended, Aegon the Younger was crowned as Aegon III Targaryen, the king who would preside over the twilight of the dragons. He was called the Dragonbane in later years, for during his reign the last dragons died, and many whispered that his hatred had somehow caused their extinction. Whether this was true or merely superstition, the age of dragons ended under a king who had been their greatest victim. The death of the dragons came slowly during the reign of Aegon III, as one by one the great beasts sickened and died. Some said it was a curse born of the dance, that so much dragon blood had been spilled that the magic sustaining them had broken. Others blamed the maesters of the citadel, whispering that a secret conspiracy had worked for generations to eliminate the source of Targaryen power. The last dragon was a stunted, sickly thing, barely larger than a dog, her wings withered and her fire cold. She laid a clutch of eggs before she died, but none of them hatched, despite every effort of the maesters and pyromancers. When she breathed her last, the children of Valyria became a house like any other, their greatest weapon gone forever. The skull of Balerion still hung in the throne room, a reminder of what had been, but the living fire was extinguished, and the world grew smaller. Viserys II, Targaryen had been presumed dead during the dance, lost at sea when the fleet carrying him was destroyed in the Battle of the Gullet. In truth, he had been captured and taken to the Free Cities, where he spent years in captivity before finally returning to Westeros. By then, his brother Aegon III sat upon the throne, and Viserys served as Hand of the King, proving himself the most capable administrator the realm had seen since Jaehaerys. When Aegon III died, the crown passed first to Daeron I and then to Baelor the Front. But both of these kings died young and without issue. At last, Viserys himself became king, though he ruled for only a single year before his own death. In that brief reign, he continued the reforms he had championed as Hand, seeking to restore the prosperity that had been shattered by the dance. His son, Aegon, would undo much of his work, but Viserys II is remembered as one of the wisest Targaryens, a man who understood that ruling required more than dragons. Daeron the Targaryen, called the Young Dragon, became king at the age of 14 and immediately set his sights on the conquest of Dorne, the only kingdom that had resisted his ancestors. He was brilliant and bold, a military genius who accomplished what Aegon the Conqueror could not. He brought Dorne to its knees. The campaign was swift and decisive, and Daeron rode in triumph through the Dornish sands. Yet holding Dorne proved far more difficult than conquering it. The Dornish rose against their occupiers, fighting a guerrilla war that bled the Targaryen forces dry. Daeron himself was killed at the age of 18 during a peace conference that proved to be a trap. His conquest died with him, and Dorne regained its independence. Daeron had been a hero, celebrated for his courage and skill, but his legacy was a cautionary tale about the difference between winning a war and winning a peace. Baelor III Targaryen was the polar opposite of his warrior brother, a man of such fervent piety that he was called Baelor the Blessed. He walked barefoot through Dorne to make peace, suffering viper bites and surviving through what many considered a miracle. He built the great sept of Baelor in King's Landing, that towering monument to the faith that would dominate the city's skyline for centuries. Yet Baelor's holiness bordered on madness. He fasted so severely that his health failed. He locked his 3 sisters in the Maiden Vault to preserve their virtue, denying them any chance at normal lives. He attempted to hatch dragon eggs through prayer and contemplation. In the end, his excessive fasting killed him, and the realm was left in the hands of his uncle Viserys. Baelor was remembered as a saint by some and a fool by others, a king whose devotion to the gods left little room for the practical matters of ruling. Aegon IV Targaryen earned the name Aegon the Unworthy, and history has judged that title to be entirely deserved. He was a man of insatiable appetites, gluttonous in food and drink and flesh, caring nothing for the duties of kingship and everything for his own pleasure. He grew so fat in his later years that he could barely walk, carried from place to place by servants while he gorged himself on delicacies. Aegon took mistresses beyond counting, fathering bastards across the realm with women of every station, from high-born ladies to common tavern wenches. His legitimate wife, Queen Nerys, was a pious and gentle woman who suffered greatly in her marriage, finding solace only in her faith and in the company of her brother Aemon, the Dragon Knight. Aegon delighted in tormenting Nerys, spreading rumors that her son Daeron was not his but Aemon's, a slander that would poison relations within House Targaryen for generations. When Aegon finally died, bloated and diseased, few mourned his passing, though the chaos he left behind would haunt the realm for decades. Nyarys Targaryen was everything her husband was not: devout, faithful, gentle, and long-suffering. She had wished to become a septa, dedicating her life to the faith, but her father had other plans, wedding her to her brother Aegon to continue the Targaryen line. The marriage was a torment for Nerys from the first night to the last. Aegon flaunted his mistresses before her, mocked her piety, and treated her with casual cruelty that wore away at her spirit year after year. She bore him 2 children, Daeron and Daenerys, though the births nearly killed her, and the Maesters warned that another pregnancy would mean her death. When Aegon demanded she give him more heirs regardless, it was her brother Aemon who intervened, threatening the king himself to protect his sister. Nyarys died before her husband, worn out by sorrow and suffering, and the realm remembered her as a woman who deserved far better than the fate the gods had given her. Aemon Targaryen, called the Dragon Knight, was considered the greatest knight of his age, perhaps the greatest knight who ever lived. He was tall and handsome, with the silver hair of his house and a skill at arms that made him legendary. He served in the King's Guard, wearing the white cloak with more honor than any who came before or after. Aemon won every tourney he entered, defeated every foe he faced, and remained true to his vows despite the love that many whispered he bore for his sister Nyarys. Whether that love was ever consummated, history does not record, though Aegon the Unworthy spread vicious rumors to the contrary. Aemon died defending his brother from assassins, taking mortal wounds while ensuring the king escaped. Even in death, he was faithful to his duty, though the king he died protecting was unworthy of such sacrifice. The songs still sing of the Dragon Knight, of his valor and his tragedy, a man who embodied everything a knight should be. Daeron II, Targaryen, called Daeron the Good, succeeded his father Aegon the Unworthy, and spent his reign trying to undo the damage his father had caused. He was a scholarly man, more comfortable with books than swords, and he understood that the realm needed peace and stability after the excesses of the previous reign. Daeron accomplished what no Targaryen before him had managed. He brought Dorne into the realm through marriage rather than conquest, wedding Miriah Martell and securing an alliance that would endure for generations. The Dornish joined the Seven Kingdoms at last, not as conquered subjects, but as equal partners. Yet Daeron's legitimacy was questioned throughout his reign, the poisonous whispers of Aegon IV suggesting that he was truly the son of Aemon the Dragon Knight. These rumors gave ammunition to those who opposed him, particularly the bastard brothers who believed they had a better claim to the throne. On his deathbed, Aegon IV committed perhaps his greatest act of destruction. He legitimized all of his bastard children with a single stroke. The Great Bastards, as they came to be called, suddenly had claims to the Iron Throne, and several of them had the ambition and ability to press those claims. Daemon, Aegor, Brynden, and Shiera were the most notable among them, each formidable in their own way. By legitimizing them, Aegon created rivals to his true-born son Daeron, sowing seeds of conflict that would bloom into 5 separate rebellions over the following decades. Some historians believe Aegon did this deliberately, one final act of spite against the son he had never loved. Others suggest he was simply too ill to understand the consequences of his actions. Whatever his reasons, the legitimization of the Great Bastards ensured that the realm would bleed for generations after Aegon, the Unworthy, was dust in his tomb. Daemon Blackfyre was the most dangerous of the Great Bastards, a warrior prince whose skill and charisma made him a natural king in the eyes of many. He was the son of Aegon IV and his cousin Daena Targaryen, the Defiant, and he inherited the best qualities of both parents: his father's charm without his cruelty, his mother's courage without her recklessness. Aegon had favored Daemon above all his bastards, giving him the Valyrian steel sword Blackfire, the blade of Aegon the Conqueror himself. When Daemon took the sword's name as his own, creating House Blackfire, many saw it as a sign that he was the true heir to the conquest. Daemon was everything Daeron was not: a warrior, a leader of men, tall and strong and golden. When he raised his banner in rebellion, nearly half the realm flocked to his cause, believing that the sword made the king, and that Daemon was more worthy than his bookish half-brother. The first Blackfire rebellion tore the realm apart, pitting brother against brother and lord against lord in a conflict that left thousands dead. Daemon Blackfire led his forces with skill and valor, winning battle after battle as he marched toward King's Landing. His army included many of the greatest warriors of the age, men who believed in his cause and his right to rule. For a time, it seemed that Daemon might actually succeed, that he would sweep aside Daeron and claim the Iron Throne for himself. But at the Battle of the Red Grass Field, the tide turned. The fighting was brutal and bloody, lasting from dawn until dusk, and in the end, Daemon Blackfire fell, cut down by arrows while trying to reach the Targaryen banner. His twin sons fell with him, and though the battle continued for hours afterward, the rebellion died with Daemon. The survivors fled across the narrow sea, nursing their grievances and planning for the day they would return. Aegor Rivers, called Bittersteel, was another of the great bastards, a son of Aegon IV by a woman of House Bracken. He was a warrior of great skill, fierce and unforgiving, but he was also a man consumed by hatred. Bittersteel hated his half-brother Bloodraven with a passion that defined his life, and he threw himself into the Blackfire cause with the fervor of a zealot. After the defeat at the Red Grass Field, Bittersteel gathered the surviving Blackfire loyalists and fled to Essos, where he founded the Golden Company, a Atzau mercenary army dedicated to restoring the Blackfire line. The Golden Company would become the most feared sellsword company in the known world. Their words, "Beneath the gold, the bitter steel," a reminder of their founder's unyielding nature. Bittersteel lived for decades in exile, launching rebellion after rebellion, each one failing, but none breaking his resolve. He died still dreaming of conquest, and his skull was dipped in gold and carried at the head of the company he had built. Brynden Rivers, called Bloodraven, was perhaps the most enigmatic of the great bastards. He was an albino, with milk-white skin and red eyes, and a birthmark on his face that resembled a raven. Unlike his half-brothers, Bloodraven remained loyal to the Iron Throne, serving Daeron II and his successors as Spymaster and Hand of the King. He was a sorcerer, learned in the dark arts of the Children of the Forest, and it was said that he had 1,000 eyes and one, seeing all that transpired in the realm through his network of spies and his own mysterious powers. Bloodraven carried the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister and wielded a weirwood bow that never missed its mark. At the Red Grass Field, it was his arrows that brought down Daemon Blackfire and turned the tide of battle. He was feared and hated in equal measure, a creature of shadows who served the realm in ways that most preferred not to know. Shiera Seastar was the only daughter among the great bastards, a woman of legendary beauty who captivated all who saw her. She had one blue eye and one green, a mark of her mysterious heritage, and her silver gold hair fell to her ankles. Shiera was learned in the old arts, collecting books and potions and artifacts from across the known world. She never married, though both Bloodraven and Bittersteel sought her hand, and she played them against each other with a skill that only deepened their mutual hatred. Some whispered that she bathed in blood to maintain her youth, others that she had made pacts with dark powers. The truth of Shiera Seastar remains hidden, like so much about her. She was a woman of secrets, and she carried those secrets to her grave, leaving behind only legends and speculation. Of all the great bastards, she alone seems to have sought no crown, content to pursue her own mysterious purposes. Daeron II may have won the first Blackfire Rebellion, but his reign was marked by the specter of further conflict, and his successors would face 4 more Blackfire uprisings over the following decades. The Second Blackfire Rebellion was a brief affair, crushed before it truly began when Bloodraven arrested the conspirators at a wedding feast. The Third Rebellion saw Demon the Prince, Blackfire, called the Pretender, attempt to press his claim, only to be defeated and captured. The Fourth Rebellion was led by Demon the Third Blackfire, who died in the fighting along with Bittersteel's successor as leader of the Golden Company. Each rebellion was smaller than the last. The Awas Blackfire caused diminishing with each failure, but the threat never quite disappeared. The realm lived in fear that somewhere across the narrow sea, another Blackfire pretender was being groomed to try again. The Great Spring Sickness swept through Westeros during the reign of Aerys Thur, killing tens of thousands and reaching even into the Red Keep itself. King Daeron II died of the plague, along with 2 of his grandsons who had been in line for the throne. The hand of the king perished as well, and the High Septon and countless lords and small folk across the realm. The bodies were too numerous to bury, so they were burned in great pyres that filled the sky with smoke for weeks. Aerys Ahai, who had been distant from court life and more interested in books and prophecy than in ruling, found himself suddenly king. He was ill-suited to the task, preferring to leave governance to Bloodraven while he pursued his scholarly interests. The realm struggled to recover from the plague, weakened and depleted, and many saw the sickness as a punishment from the gods for the sins of Aegon the Unworthy. Aerys III Targaryen was a dreamer, lost in ancient texts and prophecies while his hand, Bloodraven, ruled in his stead. He never consummated his marriage to his wife Aelinor, seemingly uninterested in the physical world, and he produced no heirs to continue his line. Some said Aerys was searching for the secrets of hatching dragons, others that he was trying to unlock the mysteries of the prince that was promised. Whatever his goals, he achieved none of them that history records. When Aerys died without issue, the crown passed to his brother Maekar, and Bloodraven's power began to wane. Aerys is remembered as one of the least consequential Targaryen kings, a man who wore the crown but never truly ruled, content to let others bear the burden of governance while he pursued knowledge that would die with him. Maekar, the Spare Targaryen, came to the throne stained by tragedy, for he had accidentally killed his own brother Baelor during a tourney melee. Baelor Breakspear had been the most beloved prince of his generation, heir to the throne and hope of the realm, and Maekar's mace had crushed his skull in the chaos of the fight. Though it was an accident, Maekar carried the guilt for the rest of his life, and many whispered that he was cursed. He was a stern and unyielding king, perhaps trying to prove through severity that he was worthy of the crown that should have been his brother's. Maekar had 4 sons, but fate was cruel to each of them. Daeron drank himself to death. Aerion's madness led to his demise. Aemon chose the maester's chain over the crown, and only Aegon, the youngest, would live to wear the kingship. Maekar himself died in battle against a rebellious lord, fighting to the end as a warrior king should. Aerion Targaryen, called Bright Flame, was one of the cruelest and most unstable members of House Targaryen, a prince whose madness was apparent from childhood. He was Maekar's second son, handsome and charming when he wished to be, but beneath the surface lurked a darkness that frightened all who knew him. Aerion was obsessed with dragons and fire, believing himself to be a dragon in human form. He committed acts of casual cruelty that shocked even the hardened court, burning a puppet show because the wooden dragon was killed, threatening to blind servants who displeased him. His end came when he drank a cup of wildfire, believing that the flames would transform him into a true dragon. The wildfire burned through him from the inside, and Aerion died screaming, leaving behind a small son whose claim to the throne was passed over in favor of his more stable uncle. The tale of Aerion Brightflame became a cautionary story about the madness that sometimes touched the Targaryen line. Aegon V. Targaryen, called Aegon the Unlikely, was never expected to become king. He was the 4th son of a 4th son, so far down the line of succession that no one imagined he would ever wear the crown. As a boy, he traveled Westeros disguised as the squire of a hedge knight, Sir Duncan the Tall, seeing the realm from the perspective of the small folk, rather than from the heights of the Red Keep. These experiences shaped him profoundly, giving him a compassion for the common people that was rare among royalty. When the Great Council of 233 AC convened to choose a new king, they passed over the infant son of Aerion and the Maester Aemon to select Aegon, who had proven himself capable and wise. Aegon brought Sir Duncan to court as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and together they worked to reform the realm, challenging the power of the great lords on behalf of the small folk they had once traveled among. Aemon Targaryen chose the Maester's chain over the Iron Throne, one of the most remarkable decisions in the history of the dynasty. He was the older brother of Aegon Fief, a man of great wisdom and learning who had felt the call of the Citadel from his youth. When offered the crown after Maekar's death, Aemon refused, knowing that his brother would make a better king. To remove himself as a potential rival or rallying point for malcontents, Aemon took the Black and joined the Night's Watch, serving at Castle Black for decades. He became the oldest man in Westeros, living past his 100th year, a blind and frail maester who still possessed one of the sharpest minds in the realm. Aemon witnessed the fall of his house from afar, unable to help, and he died at sea while traveling to find the last Targaryen. His wisdom and kindness touched all who knew him, and he is remembered as one of the noblest souls ever to bear the Targaryen name. The reign of Aegon V was marked by his attempts to improve the lives of the small folk, efforts that brought him into constant conflict with the great lords who benefited from their oppression. He tried to outlaw the lord's right to the First Night, to limit the taxes that could be imposed on peasants, to protect common folk from the arbitrary justice of their betters. At every turn, the lords resisted, and without dragons to enforce his will, Aegon could only accomplish so much. His children made matters worse by refusing the marriages he had arranged for them, each following their hearts rather than their duty. Prince Duncan married a common woman and gave up his claim to the throne. Prince Jaehaerys wed his sister Shaera against their father's wishes. Princess Raelle alone fulfilled her betrothal, wedding into House Baratheon. Aegon's frustration with his inability to enforce his reforms led him to attempt something desperate. He tried to hatch dragon eggs at Summerhall. The tragedy of Summerhall remains one of the great mysteries of Targaryen history, an event whose details have been deliberately obscured. What is known is that Aegon V gathered his court at the Targaryen Summer Palace for what was meant to be a celebration, but which turned into a catastrophe. Fire consumed the castle, killing King Aegon, his eldest son, Prince Duncan, and Sir Duncan the Tall, the Lord Commander who had been Aegon's companion since boyhood. The cause of the fire was never officially determined, though whispers suggested that Aegon had been attempting a ritual to hatch dragon eggs, perhaps involving wildfire or blood magic. The same night that Summerhall burned, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was born, as if the tragedy and the promise came together in a single moment. The ruins of Summerhall were never rebuilt, left as a haunted memorial to the king who had dreamed of dragons. Jaehaerys II. Targaryen is often called the Forgotten King, his brief reign overshadowed by the catastrophe that preceded it and the madness that followed. He was the second son of Aegon V, never expected to rule until his elder brother Duncan renounced his claim for the love of a common woman. Jaehaerys was frail and sickly throughout his life, prone to illness and lacking the physical strength of his ancestors. Yet, what he lacked in body, he possessed in mind and spirit. He was a capable ruler who managed to suppress the Fifth Blackfyre Rebellion, the final attempt by that rival line to claim the throne. The pretender, Maelys the Monstrous, a grotesque giant of a man, was slain in single combat by Sir Barristan Selmy during the War of the Ninepenny Kings, and with his death, the male line of House Blackfyre was extinguished forever. Jaehaerys reigned for only 3 years before his health failed him, leaving behind a young son who would become the last Targaryen to sit the Iron Throne. The marriage of Jaehaerys II to his sister Shaera was not arranged by their father, but rather chosen by themselves, continuing the Targaryen tradition despite Aegon V's attempts to end it. Aegon had wanted to use his children's marriages to build alliances with the great houses, to strengthen royal authority through bonds of blood. But Jaehaerys and Shaera loved each other with a passion that would not be denied, and they wed in secret before their father could prevent it. Aegon, faced with the accomplished fact, was forced to accept the union. The marriage produced 2 children, Aerys, who would become king, and Rhaella, who would become his queen. Some said that Jaehaerys and Shaera's defiance of their father was romantic, proof that love could conquer duty. Others saw it as the beginning of the end, the moment when the Targaryen tendency toward self-destruction reasserted itself after a generation of relative stability. Aerys II. Targaryen began his reign as a young man full of promise, charming and energetic, with grand plans for the realm. He spoke of building new cities, of conquering the Stepstones, of making the 7 kingdoms greater than they had ever been. The lords who had known his father's quiet competence were delighted by this vibrant new king, and expectations ran high throughout the realm. Aerys appointed his childhood friend Tywin Lannister as Hand of the King, and together they seemed poised to usher in a new golden age. But the seeds of madness were already present, hidden beneath the surface. Aerys was prone to sudden enthusiasms that faded as quickly as they arose, to suspicions that had no basis in reality, to flashes of temper that startled those around him. As the years passed, these tendencies would grow stronger, fed by tragedy and isolation, until the promising young king became the monster that history remembers. Rhaella Targaryen was both sister and wife to Aerys II, bound to him by the same tradition that had united so many Targaryen siblings before them. Yet, where some of these marriages had been happy, Rhaella's was a torment from beginning to end. Aerys was cruel to her in ways that the court tried not to see, visiting her chambers only to fulfill his duty of producing heirs, treating her with contempt and occasional violence. Rhaella endured miscarriage after miscarriage, stillbirth after stillbirth, each loss driving Aerys deeper into paranoid suspicion that someone was poisoning his children in the womb. She bore him 3 children who survived infancy: Rhaegar, Viserys, and Daenerys, though the last was born after Aerys was already dead. Rhaella suffered in silence, protected only by the Kingsguard who stood outside her door and heard what happened within but could not intervene against their king. Her grace and dignity in the face of such treatment made her beloved by those who knew her truth. The defiance of Duskendale was the event that shattered whatever remained of Aerys's sanity. A minor lord named Dennis Darklyn had grown resentful of royal taxation and, in an act of extraordinary folly, took King Aerys hostage when he came to negotiate. For 6 months, the king was held prisoner in the dungeons of Duskendale, uncertain each day whether he would live or die. Tywin Lannister counseled patience, preparing to storm the castle, but it was Sir Barristan Selmy who ultimately rescued the king, infiltrating Duskendale alone and spiriting Aerys to safety. The king who emerged from captivity was not the same man who had entered it. His hair had turned white, his nails had grown long and yellow like claws, and his eyes held a wild light that never fully faded. Aerys had always been suspicious, but now he saw enemies everywhere, traitors in every shadow. The transformation of Aerys II into the Mad King was complete. Tywin Lannister served as Hand of the King for nearly 20 years, and during that time, he was the true ruler of the 7 kingdoms. He was cold and calculating, utterly without sentiment, but he was also supremely competent, bringing order and prosperity to a realm that had struggled under weaker hands. Tywin filled the royal treasury, crushed rebellious lords, and made the Iron Throne feared throughout the land. Yet his relationship with Aerys grew increasingly strained as the king's madness deepened. Aerys resented Tywin's competence, feeling that his hand received the credit that should have been the king's. He insulted Tywin at every opportunity, rejected his counsel, and when Tywin proposed a marriage between Prince Rhaegar and his daughter Cersei, Aerys refused with deliberate cruelty. The breaking point came when Aerys elevated Tywin's son, Jaime, to the Kingsguard, stealing his heir. Tywin resigned as Hand and returned to Casterly Rock, nursing grievances that would one day be paid in blood. The obsession with fire grew in Aerys as his madness deepened, until he saw in the flames a solution to all his problems. He became fascinated with wildfire, the alchemical substance that burned green and could not be extinguished by water. He attended burnings with eager anticipation, watching as men were consumed by flames, their screams music to his ears. The king began to believe that fire could cleanse the realm of traitors, that the flames could reveal who was loyal and who was false. He had caches of wildfire placed throughout King's Landing, beneath the Great Sept and the Red Keep, and in the cellars of guild halls and noble houses. In his twisted mind, Aerys was protecting himself, ensuring that if his enemies ever breached the walls, he could burn them all. He did not care that he would burn the innocent along with the guilty. To the Mad King, everyone was a potential traitor, and fire was the only truth. Rhaegar Targaryen was born amid the flames of Summerhall, and from his earliest days, he seemed touched by a melancholy that never left him. He was beautiful in the way that Targaryens often were, with silver hair and deep purple eyes, but there was a sadness in his gaze that made the ladies of the court want to comfort him. As a child, Rhaegar was bookish and solitary, spending hours in the library reading ancient texts about prophecy and the long night. Then one day, something he read changed him, and he emerged from the library determined to become a warrior. He trained until he was one of the finest knights in the realm, a champion of tourneys beloved by the small folk. Yet the melancholy never left him, and he was often found playing his harp in the ruins of Summerhall, singing songs so sad that those who heard them wept without knowing why. The prophecy of the prince that was promised consumed Rhaegar's thoughts, shaping every decision he made. He believed that this legendary hero, who would save the world from darkness, would come from his bloodline, and he became convinced that he must do everything in his power to fulfill this prophecy. At first, Rhaegar believed that he himself was the prince, but later he came to think that the hero would be his child. He studied the ancient texts obsessively, searching for clues about what must be done. The prophecy spoke of a prince born of the line of Aerys and Rhaella, of a song of ice and fire, of 3 heads of the dragon. Rhaegar became certain that he needed 3 children to fulfill the prophecy, 3 heads for the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen. This obsession would drive him to make choices that would bring down his dynasty and plunge the realm into war. Elia Martell of Dorne became Rhaegar's wife, a match that surprised many who had expected the prince to wed a woman of Valyrian blood. Elia was delicate and gentle, a princess of the southern kingdom that had joined the realm through marriage rather than conquest. She loved Rhaegar deeply, and by all accounts he cared for her as well, though perhaps not with the passion she deserved. Elia bore Rhaegar 2 children, a daughter named Rhaenys, who had her mother's dark hair and olive skin, and a son named Aegon, who looked more Targaryen with his silver hair. But the births were difficult, and the Maesters warned that another pregnancy would likely kill her. This news struck Rhaegar like a blow, for he believed he needed 3 children for the prophecy, and Elia could give him no more. The prince began to look elsewhere for the 3rd head of the dragon, a decision that would have consequences beyond his darkest imaginings. The tourney at Harrenhal was the greatest tournament in a generation, drawing knights and lords from across the realm to compete beneath the walls of that cursed castle. Rhaegar rode brilliantly, defeating all challengers, and when the time came to name the Queen of Love and Beauty, all expected him to crown his wife Elia. Instead, he rode past her and laid the crown of winter roses in the lap of Lyanna Stark, the daughter of the Warden of the North, who was already betrothed to Robert Baratheon. The crowd fell silent in shock. Elia sat frozen, her humiliation complete. Robert's face darkened with rage, and Lyanna herself seemed uncertain whether to be honored or horrified. In that single moment, Rhaegar set in motion the events that would destroy House Targaryen. The realm would remember it as the moment when all the smiles died, when the promise of a new golden age curdled into the certainty of coming war. What happened between Rhaegar and Lyanna after the tourney remains one of the great mysteries of Westerosi history. The official story is that Rhaegar abducted her, carrying her off against her will to some hidden location where he kept her prisoner. This is what Robert Baratheon believed until his dying day, and his belief fed a hatred of the Targaryens that never cooled. But others whisper that Lyanna went willingly, that she loved Rhaegar, and fled with him to escape a marriage to Robert that she did not want. The truth may never be known with certainty. What is known is that when Brandon Stark rode to King's Landing to demand his sister's return, Aerys had him arrested and executed along with his father Rickard, burning them alive while the court watched in horror. The Mad King had overreached at last, and the realm rose against him. Robert's rebellion, which some call the War of the Usurper, began when Jon Arryn raised his banners in defiance of King Aerys. The Mad King had demanded the heads of Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark, who had been fostered in the Eyrie, but Lord Arryn refused to betray his wards. The North, the Stormlands, the Vale, and the Riverlands united against the Iron Throne, while the Reach and Dorne remained loyal to the Targaryens. It was a war fought on many fronts, with battles at Summerhall, Ashford, and the Stony Sept. But the decisive confrontation came at the Trident, where the rebel army met the royal host led by Prince Rhaegar himself. The prince had finally emerged from wherever he had hidden Lyanna, perhaps believing that his skill at arms could save his father's throne. He was wrong. The Battle of the Trident decided the fate of the Seven Kingdoms, and it ended with Robert's hammer crushing Rhaegar's chest. The two men met in single combat in the shallows of the river, wading through water that ran red with blood. Rhaegar was a fine warrior, but Robert was a fury of the storm, driven by rage and grief and love for the woman he believed Rhaegar had stolen. When Robert's warhammer found its mark, the rubies on Rhaegar's breastplate scattered into the water, and the prince fell dying into the stream. His last words were a woman's name, whispered so softly that none could say for certain whether he called for Elia or for Lyanna. The Loyalist army broke and fled, and the path to King's Landing lay open. The ford where Rhaegar fell is still called the Ruby Ford, and men still find gems in the water, precious stones stained with the blood of the last dragon prince. The sack of King's Landing was the final act of the rebellion, though the atrocities committed that day would stain the victors for generations. Tywin Lannister, who had sat out the war at Casterly Rock, appeared before the gates with his army and convinced the defenders that he had come to aid the king. Once inside, the Lannister forces turned on the city, looting and burning and killing without mercy. The Mad King, seeing that all was lost, commanded his pyromancers to ignite the wildfire caches hidden throughout the city, preferring to burn 500,000 people rather than lose his throne. It was his own Kingsguard, young Jaime Lannister, who stopped him, driving his sword through the king's back and slitting his throat for good measure. Aerys died on the floor of his throne room, the last words on his lips an order to burn them all. Princess Aelia and her children did not survive the sack, their fates among the darkest chapters of that terrible day. Sir Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, found them in the royal apartments. What happened there was whispered but rarely spoken aloud, for the details were too horrible for decent people to contemplate. Young Princess Rhaenys, only 3 years old, was found beneath her father's bed, where she had hidden from the monsters. Infant Prince Aegon and his mother met their ends together. Their bodies were presented to Robert Baratheon wrapped in Lannister crimson, proof that the Targaryen line had been extinguished. Robert called it a necessary act of war. Others called it murder. The question of what truly happened to Elia and her children would haunt the realm for years, a crime for which justice was never truly served. Queen Rhaella had been sent to Dragonstone before the city fell, pregnant with her last child and accompanied by young Prince Viserys. There she remained as the rebellion swept away everything she had known, waiting for word of her husband and eldest son, learning instead of their deaths. The grief she felt can only be imagined, but she had no time to mourn, for she was a queen still, and she had children to protect. When the Targaryen fleet was destroyed in a great storm, Rhaella went into labor, bringing forth a daughter in the midst of thunder and lightning and howling wind. She named the child Daenerys, and then she died, her body too exhausted from years of suffering to survive the birth. Rhaella Targaryen had endured more than any woman should, and in the end, she gave her life so that her daughter might live. Viserys Targaryen was only 8 years old when he became the head of House Targaryen, a boy king with no kingdom, fleeing into exile with his newborn sister. He was smuggled across the narrow sea by loyal servants, taking with him nothing but the clothes on his back and the crown that had belonged to his father. For years, Viserys wandered the free cities, selling what few possessions he had to survive, begging hospitality from merchant princes who grew tired of him and turned him away. He became bitter and unstable, convinced that the lords of Westeros were simply waiting for him to return, that they would rise up to support his claim. He sold his mother's crown, the last treasure of House Targaryen, and the act broke something inside him. Viserys became cruel to his sister, the only person he had left, warning her not to wake the dragon. He dreamed of conquest while living in poverty, a king without a throne or a single soldier. Daenerys Targaryen was born in storm and tragedy, and she never knew the kingdom that had been stolen from her family. Her earliest memories were of running, of strange cities and stranger faces, of a brother whose moods shifted like the wind. Viserys told her stories of Westeros, of the Iron Throne and the Red Keep, of the usurpers who had murdered their family and would murder them too if given the chance. He told her she must be strong, that she must help him reclaim what was theirs, that she owed him everything for keeping her alive. Daenerys grew up believing she was a princess in exile, that somewhere across the sea was a home waiting for her, a house with a red door and a lemon tree outside her window. She dreamed of that home even as Viserys dragged her from city to city, selling their future to anyone who would listen. She was a child of fire, though she did not yet know what that meant. The marriage of Daenerys to Khal Drogo was arranged by her brother Viserys, who traded his sister for an army of Dothraki screamers. Drogo was a great Khal, a warlord who had never been defeated in battle, whose khalasar numbered 40,000 riders. To Viserys, this savage horse lord was a means to an end, the weapon he would use to reclaim his throne. To Daenerys, Drogo was a terrifying stranger, a giant of a man with copper skin and a braid that fell past his waist, hung with bells that rang with every kill he had made. She was only 13 when she was presented to him like a brood mare, stripped and examined, sold for the promise of soldiers. On her wedding night, Daenerys wept, alone in a strange land with a husband who did not speak her language. Yet something shifted in the days that followed. She began to learn the Dothraki tongue, to understand their ways, to find strength she had never known she possessed. The frightened girl who had been sold began to transform into something else entirely. Drogo gave Daenerys 3 dragon eggs as a wedding gift, presented to her by the magister Illyrio Mopatis. They were ancient things, turned to stone over the centuries, beautiful but supposedly lifeless. One was deep green with bronze flecks, another cream streaked with gold, the third black as midnight with scarlet ripples. Daenerys was drawn to them from the moment she saw them, feeling a warmth in their presence that others could not detect. She kept them close, placing them beside her bed, holding them in her hands when she felt alone. Some said the eggs were from the Shadowlands beyond Ashai, others that they dated back to the days of old Valyria itself. Whatever their origin, they called to Daenerys in ways she could not explain, as though the stone shells contained something waiting to be awakened. The eggs were worth a fortune, enough to buy ships and soldiers, but Daenerys refused to sell them. They were hers, and somehow she knew their story was not yet finished. Viserys met his end at the hands of the husband he had tried to use, a death as golden as his dreams of conquest. He had grown increasingly unstable during his time with the Dothraki, frustrated that Drogo had not yet delivered the army he had been promised, enraged that his sister had found happiness while he remained a beggar king. When Viserys threatened Daenerys and her unborn child in the sacred city of Vaes Dothrak, where the drawing of blood was forbidden, Drogo responded with characteristic directness. He melted down his golden belt and poured the molten metal over Viserys' head, giving him the golden crown he had always desired. Daenerys watched her brother die and felt nothing but relief. He had been cruel to her for as long as she could remember, and in the end, he had proven himself no true dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon, she thought, and Viserys had burned. Whatever Daenerys was becoming, she knew now that she was the last of her house. The death of Khal Drogo came slowly, the result of a festering wound that a Maegi's magic could not heal. Drogo had been injured in battle, a minor cut that should have closed within days, but the witch Mirri Maz Duur had treated it with poultices that poisoned rather than cured. By the time Daenerys realized the betrayal, Drogo was dying, his great body wasting away, his mind already gone. In desperation, Daenerys begged Mirri to use blood magic to save him, and the witch agreed, but the price was terrible beyond measure. The ritual took the life of Daenerys' unborn son, the stallion who was meant to mount the world, and it left Drogo a hollow shell, breathing but not living, his eyes empty of everything he had been. Daenerys smothered him with a pillow, giving him the mercy of death, and in that moment she truly became a widow. The Khalasar scattered, the warriors abandoning a Khal who could no longer lead them, leaving Daenerys alone in the Red Waste with nothing but a handful of followers and 3 stone eggs. The birth of the dragons came from fire and death, from a funeral pyre that should have consumed Daenerys along with the body of her husband. She built the pyre herself, placing Drogo upon the wood along with Mirri Maz Duur, who would pay for her treachery with her life. Daenerys placed the 3 dragon eggs among the flames, feeling in her heart that this was what they had been waiting for. As the fire roared and the witch screamed, Daenerys walked into the flames, and those who watched were certain they would see her burn. But when the sun rose over the ashes, Daenerys emerged unburned, naked and covered in soot, with 3 small dragons clinging to her body. They were the first dragons seen in the world in over a century, creatures of legend made flesh once more. Daenerys named them Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion for the husband and brothers she had lost. The mother of dragons had been born. The black dragon Drogon was the largest and fiercest of Daenerys' children, named for the Khal who had been her sun and stars. From the moment of his birth, Drogon was wild and willful, harder to control than his brothers, more likely to hunt on his own and disappear for days at a time. His scales were black as coal, his eyes red as the flames he breathed, and his wingspan grew broader with each passing year. Daenerys felt a special connection to Drogon, as though their souls were bound together in ways she did not fully understand. He was the dragon she rode, the mount that carried her across the skies of Essos, and his flames were the hottest of the three. Drogon was a terror to those who faced him in battle, a creature straight from the nightmares of those who had thought dragons were gone forever. Yet, for all his ferocity, he came when Daenerys called, and he bent his neck for her to climb upon his back. He was her child, her weapon, and perhaps her doom. Rhaegal bore scales of green and bronze, colors that shifted in the light like jade and ancient copper. He was named for Daenerys' brother Rhaegar, the prince she had never known, the father who might have been king if fate had been kinder. Rhaegal was more docile than Drogon, but no less dangerous, his flames burning hot enough to melt steel, his teeth and claws sharp enough to tear through armor. He grew alongside his brothers in the pyramids of Meereen, hunting the waters of Slaver's Bay, learning to fear nothing in a world that had forgotten what dragons could do. Rhaegal answered to Daenerys, though not as readily as Drogon, and there were times when his wildness made him nearly as unpredictable as the Black Dragon. Still, he was her child, blood of her blood, and she loved him as a mother loves her son. The Green Dragon carried within him the memory of a prince who had died at the Trident, a legacy of prophecy and sorrow. Viserion was cream and gold, the most beautiful of the three dragons, though beauty in a dragon is a dangerous thing. He was named for Daenerys' brother Viserys, despite the cruelty she had suffered at his hands, for she remembered the boy her brother had been before exile had twisted him into something bitter and broken. Viserion was the smallest of the dragons, though still large enough to strike terror into any who faced him, and his flames were said to burn with a pale gold light. Of the three, he was the gentlest with Daenerys, the most likely to seek her company, the most responsive to her commands. Yet even Viserion was a dragon, with all the danger that implied, and those who mistook his relative tameness for weakness did not live to repeat the error. The cream and gold dragon soared above the cities of Slaver's Bay, a reminder that the old powers had returned to the world. The journey across the Red Waste nearly killed Daenerys and her small Khalasar, a march through endless desert with little water and less hope. They were the remnants of Drogo's great horde, the weak and the old and the faithful few who had chosen to follow the Mother of Dragons rather than abandon her. Many died along the way, their bodies left for the Eos vultures, their bones bleaching in the merciless sun. Daenerys led them forward because there was nowhere else to go, because turning back meant certain death, because she had seen a comet blazing red across the sky and believed it was a sign. The dragons grew stronger even as their human companions grew weaker, feeding on whatever prey they could find, their flames growing hotter with each passing day. When at last Daenerys found the garden city of Korth, she was a ghost of herself, burned dark by the sun, but she was alive, and she had brought dragons back into the world. Qarth was a city of wonders and treachery, a place where merchant princes smiled while plotting murder. The Qartheen welcomed Daenerys as a curiosity, fascinated by her dragons, eager to possess them for themselves. She was offered ships and soldiers in exchange for her children, riches beyond counting if she would only part with one of the three. Daenerys refused every offer, knowing that her dragons were more valuable than gold, that they were the source of whatever power she possessed. The warlocks of the House of the Undying tried to trap her in their palace of visions, showing her images of past and future, of thrones and shadows and promises of knowledge. Daenerys escaped only through fire, commanding Drogon to burn the warlocks and their cursed house. She learned in Korth that she could trust no one, that everyone wanted something from her, and that her dragons were both her greatest strength and her greatest vulnerability. The cities of Slaver's Bay had grown fat on human misery for thousands of years, and Daenerys resolved to tear them down. She came first to Astapor, seeking to buy an army of Unsullied, the slave soldiers who were trained from childhood to feel no pain and fear no death. The good masters of Astapor agreed to sell her 8,000 warriors in exchange for her largest dragon, never suspecting that Daenerys had no intention of honoring the bargain. When the transaction was complete and the Unsullied were hers to command, Daenerys spoke a word in High Valyrian, and Drogon bathed the slavers in dragonfire. The Unsullied turned on their former masters, and Astapor fell in a single day. Daenerys freed every slave in the city and offered them a choice: follow her freely or remain behind. Most chose to follow the woman who had broken their chains. Yunkai and Meereen fell in turn, and Daenerys became a liberator whose name was spoken with reverence by those who had been property. She commanded the great harpy of Meereen to be pulled down, replacing the symbol of slavery with her own banners. Former slaves flocked to her cause, calling her Mysa, the mother who had freed them, reaching out to touch the hem of her garment as though she were divine. But ruling proved harder than conquering, and Daenerys discovered that breaking chains was simpler than building something new. The masters plotted against her, funding insurgents called the Sons of the Harpy who murdered freedmen in the streets. The economy collapsed without slave labor to sustain it. Diseases spread through refugee camps. Daenerys had wanted to sail for Westeros, to reclaim her family's throne. But she could not abandon the people who had believed in her. She stayed in Meereen, trying to hold together a world she had shattered, learning the hard lessons of queenship. The dragons grew too large and too dangerous to remain free in a city full of people. When Drogon killed a child, burning a little girl to ash while her father watched helplessly, Daenerys faced the hardest decision of her reign. She could not execute her own children, but neither could she allow them to continue killing innocents. With a heavy heart, she lured Rhaegal and Viserion into the great pit beneath the pyramid and chained them there in the darkness. The dragons screamed as the chains were fastened, calling to their mother, not understanding why she was abandoning them. Daenerys wept as she walked away, the sound of their cries following her up the stairs. Drogon, the black dragon, could not be captured, for he had flown away and would not return. The mother of dragons had become the jailer of dragons, and the fire that burned in her heart grew cold with grief. Daenerys vanished from Meereen upon the back of Drogon, carried away during an attack in the great fighting pit. The dragon had returned at the moment of her greatest danger, descending into the arena to save his mother from the Sons of the Harpy. Daenerys climbed upon his back and spoke the command to fly, and Drogon lifted her into the sky, carrying her far from the city and the responsibilities she could no longer bear. They landed in the Dothraki Sea, the great grassland where Daenerys had first become a Khaleesi, and there she remained, alone with her dragon, eating burned horsemeat and waiting for something she could not name. She was found by a Khalasar, thousands of riders who saw the dragon and the silver-haired woman and did not know whether to worship her or kill her. Daenerys stood before them without fear, the blood of old Valyria in her veins, the fire of dragons at her command. The path that Daenerys would walk from the Dothraki Sea remains written in pages not yet published, in chapters that exist only in the mind of her creator. Her story continues beyond what has been told, beyond the dragons and the battles and the long journey home. She remains the last known Targaryen, the heir to a dynasty that once ruled the world, a young woman carrying the weight of centuries upon her shoulders. Whether she will sit the Iron Throne, whether she will bring fire and blood to Westeros as her ancestors did, whether she will prove to be a savior or a destroyer, these questions await answers that only time will reveal. Daenerys Stormborn stands at the threshold of history, and the choices she makes will determine the fate of kingdoms. The blood of the dragon flows still, diminished but not extinguished, carrying within it the memory of Valyria and the promise of fire. From Enar, the exile, to Daenerys Stormborn, the Targaryens have shaped the history of the known world, building empires and burning them down, reaching for greatness and falling into madness. They have given the Seven Kingdoms its greatest rulers and its worst tyrants, its most beloved queens and its most feared monsters. The dragon lords of old Valyria thought themselves gods, and perhaps for a time they were, but even gods can fall. The skulls of the great dragons hang in the Red Keep still, monuments to a power that once seemed eternal. Yet dragons have returned to the world, and with them the possibility that the Age of Fire is not yet ended. House Targaryen's words are fire and blood, and no words have ever been more fitting. They came to Westeros with fire, conquering kingdoms that had stood for thousands of years. They held the realm through blood, their own blood mingling generation after generation to keep the dragon alive. They fell through fire and blood as well, consumed by the very passions that had made them great. The Targaryens loved too fiercely, hated too deeply, dreamed too grandly, and when they broke, they shattered completely. Yet something in them endures, something that refuses to die, a spark of the old Valyrian flame that kindles even now in the hearts of those who carry their blood. The dragons sleep, but dragons may wake. The throne sits empty, but thrones may be reclaimed. The dynasty has fallen, but dynasties may rise again. In the end, every Targaryen returns to fire, whether through the flames of a funeral pyre or the burning of their own ambitions. They are creatures of heat and light, beautiful and terrible, impossible to look upon directly without being changed. To know them is to know the seduction of power and the price that power demands. They have been heroes and villains, saints and sinners, builders and destroyers, often all at once. The world they built stands still, though it bears the scars of their making. The wall between life and legend grows thin when speaking of Targaryens, for they lived lives that seem too vast for mere mortals. Sleep now, and let them drift through your dreams. Kings upon iron thrones, queens upon dragon wings, princes with harps and warriors with swords, all of them gone now, all of them remembered, all of them waiting in the fire for the world to call them back.